Let's move on to the first Singularity, 100 Years' War of the Evil Dragons, Orleans. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. This is part 2 of my lore of Fate Grand Order, where we'll be covering all the lore surrounding the game's first Singularity, Orleans. This isn't going to be simply a summary of events, though you can certainly use it to refresh your memory. I'll be explaining the Singularity from an overview perspective, stripping it of the suspense and dramatic pacing, so we can get straight into the facts. It's my personal way of explaining events as I understand them. I'll mention servants and their lore as it's relevant, but for more depth, be sure to check out their individual servant videos, which I've put in the comments below. Without further ado, let's dive in. As we left off from part 1, the demon god amalgamation Getia wants to recreate the universe to fix humanity's flaws. He's gonna zip back in time to the origin of the universe, but to do that he needs fuel, and he's decided to get that fuel by incinerating all of humanity over the past 3,000 years. But there's still a chance to stop him. To preserve the incineration, Getia put 7 holy grails into varying points throughout history, drastically altering events so they result in anomalies called singularities. These are the detonation points used to incinerate humanity, and if we can resolve those singularities, we can slowly undo Getia's work. Roman, or rather, Solomon, King of Mages, is our director at Chaldea, and as the last functioning master Ritsuka Fujimaru, we venture back in time via ray shift to these singularities as Chaldea detects them. We're not alone, however. We've got Mashu, our beloved Kohai, who's a wonderful demi-servant. Back at HQ, we have Leonardo da Vinci. But why is she a woman? Honestly, because she wants to be. In short, da Vinci wanted to be beautiful, and found that beauty in Mona Lisa, his most famous work of art. When being summoned as a servant, da Vinci chose to manifest in a body greatly resembling Mona Lisa. This shows that just because the Throne of Heroes records someone a certain way, there are still methods of manipulating the summoning to get different aspects of a given hero. This logic holds true for a lot of Orleans. While da Vinci got a heroic spirit sex change, the more common variants of a servant tend to be lilies and altars. A lily servant is the version of that hero at their most pure, typically in a younger form, before they encountered a lot of their defining hardships. Altars, on the other hand, are just that, alter egos. While they may have been pure and honorable during life, servants may harbor an inner darkness that they normally choose to repress. In other cases, altars are versions of a servant that manifest as imaginations of choices they could have had, paths they could have taken. In the case of Artoria Pendragon Altar, her normal spirit origin was corrupted by Angar Mainyu, resulting in a form of the King of Knights who, as she was criticized, truly was inhuman. Her love, her compassion, the part of her that literally wags when happy, is no more. That isn't to say an altar servant can't do good things. It just means that their personality and abilities have had a major shift in alignment. Thanks to this, it's possible to have a servant who is both lily and altar at the same time, which seems like a contradiction. The best I can say is that altar lilies are edgy cuties. For funsies, let's spoil Roman's fascination with the idol, Magi Mari. He doesn't realize his idol is actually Merlin, the dick wizard. Merlin's trapped in Avalon and clearly doesn't have much to do in his spare time. In the Fate timeline, I wonder if he can spy on Shiro and Artoria, making out in those grass fields, getting frisky in the flowers. Anyway, back on topic. Chaldea has discovered coordinates to send us to the first Singularity, and so we head there. Let's clarify, Solomon's Grails aren't exactly the same thing as in Fuyuki's Holy Grail Wars. They're more like the Lesser Grail, a vessel for a ton of mana. Either way, that shit's useful. If you plop a grail into a time in history, someone's bound to discover it and use it, interfering with said history. In addition, the Grail seems to arbitrarily summon various servants who don't have masters. This could be considered to be part of the counterforce's involvement to restore the singularities, but it doesn't always seem to help. On top of that, Chaldea's summoning system is more versatile than Fuyuki's. A master can not only summon multiple servants, but even restore their own command spells. Technically, if a servant dies, you can summon them again. It's weird but fun. Needless to say, It means singularities fill up fast with all sorts of servants. For Orleans, there's one major highlight, and that's Jeanne d'Arc. When France and England were nearing the end of their 100 Years' War, Jeanne was a mere country girl who believed she heard the voice of God, his lamenting. She interpreted this as a sign that she should join the army and protect France from England. It's commonly believed that she wasn't actually hearing God's voice, but that of the world itself. Either way, she suited up and joined in the battle, eventually becoming a successful leader. She took back the occupied city of Orleans, but was ultimately captured by English forces, who not only wanted her out of battle, but also wanted to discredit her as an emissary of God. The English church forced her into a trial, attempting to get her to admit she was wrong about the voice of God. The biased court declared her guilty of blasphemy and had her burned at the stake. The French king, Charles VII, had a chance to rescue her by paying ransom, but never did so. Instead, Jeanne was betrayed by those she tried to save, but she refused to regret her actions. While cruel, she accepted her end as a part of God's plan. After the war had ended, Jeanne was later declared a saint, but the story doesn't end there. Gilles de Rais, Jeanne's most trusted and loyal knight, was horrified by Jeanne's death. His religious faith fell apart, believing that no god would have allowed her to suffer so. In an attempt to force God's hand, Gilles turned to practicing black magic while raping and murdering hundreds of children. He wanted God to punish him so he could believe God was real, but in the end that never happened. Instead, Gilles was executed for his crimes, not for justice, but because greedy people coveted his lavish estate. That's how things originally played out, but in the Singularity, things have gotten out of hand. Just 3 days after Jeanne's burning, the corrupted Gilles de Rais gets his bony mitts on Solomon's Grail and uses it to grant his wish for Jeanne d'Arc to live once more. The result is everyone's favorite edgy virgin, Jeanne d'Arc Alter, or Jalter for short. Her main defining trait as an altar servant is that, unlike her pure self, Jalter does regret her military campaign, and does hold resentment for her captors and murderers. Jalter confronts her killers with a craving for some papal flambé, determined to massacre France, saving it in her own way by turning all of its citizens into undead. Big oof. To assist in this endeavor, she uses Gilles' Grail to summon a small army of servants, whom she manipulates by inflicting madness enhancement upon them. Basically, she makes her minions have berserker features, regardless of their actual class. Those servants are Chevalier Deon, Vlad III, Atalante, Carmilla, and Saint Martha. Let's start with Deon, the Knight of the White Lily. First thing that comes to mind might be the servant's sex or gender. It is said that Deon was viewed as both a man and a woman. Despite dressing in formally men's attire, their beautiful androgyny is often perceived as that of a woman. In life, Deon was presented as both man and woman, and also identified as both, so as far as we're concerned, the distinction becomes relatively insignificant. Even though Deon's genitalia was confirmed male after death, doctors also noted female genetic characteristics. In terms of heroic spirit, the rumors manifest in an ideal androgyny. Regardless, they were a French soldier and rider during the 18th and 19th centuries, serving as a spy and dragoon captain. They served Marie Antoinette, the Queen of Lilies, who we'll come back to. Next we have Vlad III, a Wallachian prince famous for defending his land against the Ottoman Turks. His methods were seen as horrifically cruel, labeling him Vlad the Impaler for scaring his enemies by displaying their soldiers impaled on large stakes. While he was seen as a hero by his country, others began to associate him with the fictional character of Count Dracula. In Apocrypha, Vlad is adamant to clear his reputation, to deny being a vampire, but under the effects of madness enhancement, he's less focused on the task here. Atalante was an Arcadian princess, abandoned by her father who sought a male heir. She was blessed by the protection of the Greek goddess Artemis, and raised in the wild to become an excellent archer and hunter. Her beauty and fame prompted her father to accept her and force her into marriage. She nearly beats her suitor in a foot race, but is unfairly tempted by the allure of golden apples. While doing like they do on the Discovery Channel, in a sacred space moreover, she and her husband are turned into animals. As a servant, all she really wants is to protect children from being abandoned like she was. But with madness enhancement, she's unable to actively pursue this. Then there's Carmilla, the Blood Countess, also known as Elizabeth Bathory. She was a spoiled Hungarian noble who was raised to view her subjects as less than human, until a fateful day when she convinced herself that her skin stayed healthy upon bathing in the blood of other women. She murdered hundreds of women in an attempt to preserve her youth and beauty, before ultimately being condemned to isolation, dying in a sealed-off prison cell. Her older aspect, Carmilla, has fully become a monster, enjoying murder and torment, making her a perfect fit for Jalter's twisted ambitions. Last, we have Saint Martha, the Dragon Rider, a 1st century Catholic saint who was exiled from Rome following Jesus' crucifixion. She is most famous for encountering the turtle-like monster, Tarask, child of Leviathan, and rendering it submissive to her. She was no doubt saintly, leaving people to believe she suppressed Tarask through her prayer and training as the Messiah's follower, but she tends to reveal a more stoic, determined side that suggests force may have been involved. Either way, unlike the other servants Jalter summons, Martha tries to resist the madness enhancement as best she can. With her team assembled, Jeanne Alter dispatches her servants to wreak havoc on the land, she herself proceeding to murder King Charles VII, preventing the signing of a peace treaty that would have ended the war. All of France begins to fear the wrath of the Dark Witch. Here's where Ritsuka and Mashu come in. Almost immediately after arriving, they encounter French soldiers who are on edge and nervously attack them. Following the soldiers after they make peace leads them to a chance encounter with, well, I'll be damned, the classic Jeanne d'Arc as a ruler servant. It turns out Jeanne was summoned as one of the masterless servants. And because this isn't a Holy Grail war, her unique abilities as a ruler are gone. Either way, she's been hearing all about this Dark Witch and decides to join Ritsuka and Mashu since their goals match each other. They travel together, searching for intel before being ambushed by waves of Jalter's servants. They're about to be defeated when they're saved by 2 more wandering servants, Marie Antoinette and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. As I said earlier, Marie was the Queen of France, particularly during the 18th century. In short, she was a caring queen whose noble rule was absolute, garnering her both love and hate during the French Revolution, a time when France's monarchy restructured into a republic. This resulted in Marie being tried as a criminal of the state, ultimately sent to be executed. As a servant, she merely wishes to continue bringing happiness to her people, not wanting to erase her cruel execution. Mozart is, well, Mozart, one of history's most famous musicians. He was a musical prodigy with progressive tastes and amazing talent for being able to replay songs after only a first hearing. As a young boy, he met with Marie Antoinette and proposed to her. He was a rather spontaneous playboy. When he composed, he was satisfied with his first instincts, not needing to revise or correct his works. His success drew the ire of other musicians, most prominently Antonio Salieri, who surprisingly is also a heroic spirit later on past the Solomon arc. Small world. Because Mozart took over Salieri's position as Kapellmeister, rumors began spreading that Salieri was somehow responsible for Mozart's death from illness and exhaustion. Many works of fiction tell of how Salieri anonymously haunted Mozart, amplifying his guilt over the death of his father, urging him to compose his father's requiem. In fate, however, these are merely baseless accusations. Following Mozart's death, Salieri actually went on to tutor Mozart's son and protege. Another fun twist for fate is that Mozart practiced magecraft, having ties to the association, making him fit to be a caster-class servant. The two wind up joining Ritsuka's growing party, and, at night, they are visited by Saint Martha. Unable to escape her madness enhancement, Martha yearns to be defeated by Ritsuka, making her last battle a chance to test the Master's resolve. Before disappearing, she tells them of a dragon slayer, Siegfried, who they'll need to team up with in order to defeat Jalter's dragons. That's right, Jalter, when created by Gilles, gains a dragon attribute, allowing her to control wyverns, and even the ferocious dragon Fafnir, into battle. Yeah, Orleans is filled with dragon-based creatures, so it makes sense for Ritsuka to seek out Siegfried who, in life, slayed Fafnir. But you know what? All these wyverns, they're just giant swallows. And you know who's a boss at killing swallows? Motherfucking Regin Kojibro Sasaki! Seriously, who needs sumanai when you've got a samurai? Burn! That aside, we really should talk about Siegfried. In life, he was a German national hero, beloved for heroically taking on almost any tasks asked of him, mainly from nobles. Fulfilling the wishes of his people led him to obtain his sword, Balmung, and even slay the dragon Fafnir. By bathing in the dragon's blood, Siegfried became immortal, minus a small spot on his back where a leaf blocked the blood. He kept accepting tasks until his actions sparked a political nightmare, and the easiest way to fix it was to have himself killed. He was a humble guy who wasn't picky with the requests he fulfilled, but because of that, he never wound up helping the peasantry, who were unable to voice their wishes. Thus, he wants to become a hero on his own terms now. Problem is, prior to Ritsuka's arrival, he fought against Jalter's forces and got cursed in the process, weakening him in future battles. While Ritsuka investigates the city of Lyon, they encounter a new servant, Phantom of the Opera. Sadly, he's one of Jalter's minions this time. Oh, wait, wasn't Phantom of the Opera a musical? Yeah, one that was based on a 19th century novel. In its story, Phantom became charmed by a wonderfully pure actress. He guided her to becoming a diva, but because his love was one-sided, he turned to committing serial murders. Clearly an assassin servant. In a similar case to Kojiro Sasaki, it's assumed the Phantom of the Opera was fictional. For the Phantom, however, it's likely the novel was based on a real person, who may or may not have committed the same crimes. Either way, this real-life person, as an anti-heroic servant, gains the abilities of the fictional Phantom. Ritsuka drives him off and finds Siegfried, who proceeds to scare off Jalter's dragons, but asserts he cannot be of much help until his curse is removed. Thus, the party now has to track down another living saint who can possibly remove Siegfried's curse. Along the way, they encounter French forces, led by Gilles de Rais's younger saber form, fighting against more wyverns, as well as two newer servants who serve Jalter, Lancelot and Charles-Henri Sanson. Lancelot's in his berserker armor from Fate Zero, barely able to speak cohesively. He was a knight of the Round Table who betrayed his king by having an affair with Arthur's wife Guinevere. He blames himself for the subsequent downfall of King Arthur, mentally tortured by Arthur's forgiveness. Turned into an unpredictable berserker servant who takes his rage out on both friend and foe. Sanson, on the other hand, was a French executioner in Paris. He loved the king and queen, but during the French Revolution, he had a lot of work to do, conducting so many executions. Sadly, the revolution ended with the decline of nobility, and Sanson had to be the one to raise the guillotine on his king and queen, Louis and Marie Antoinette. He's a bit delusional as a servant helping Jalter, believing it to be his fate to execute Marie once more. Marie has to defeat him every so often throughout the Singularity. In their search for a saint, Jeanne finds Saint George, aka Georgios, who is busy protecting a town. If they're to gain his help, they must first help him evacuate the citizens. Jeanne and Marie fight alongside him, but shit gets real when Jalter arrives with enemy reinforcements. Marie stays behind so that Jeanne and George can escape, facing both Sanson and Jalter on her own. Tragically, she perishes in the fight against Jalter, even after using her noble phantasm, Crystal Palace, which ranks her up in combat. In that same town, they encounter two friendlies, Elizabeth Bathory and Kiyohime. I've already told of Liz in relation to Carmilla. Liz is the younger, more naive version, who, unlike her murderous older self, wants to redeem herself. Kiyohime was written of in Japanese folklore as a young girl who hosted a traveling monk in need of lodging. She immediately fell in love with the monk, Anshin, and offered herself to him during the night, only to be rejected. Pressured from her persistence, Anshin falsely promised to see her again. When he broke that promise, Kiyohime went, berserk, transforming into a rampaging dragon, who burned him in his temple to ash. Anshin tried to hide in a large bell, only to die when it melted from her flames. In short, she's crazy. Liz and Kiyohime are feuding against each other at first, but quickly ally themselves with Ritsuka. In particular, Kiyohime sees Ritsuka as the second coming of her beloved Anshin, and is eerily obsessed with them. Better not lie to her, or you're dead. So what's the deal with Georgios? Well, he's a Catholic saint and brave knight, described in the Golden Legend and the Seven Champions of Christendom. He came upon a village that was suffering under a dragon, making sacrifices to keep it at bay. Georgios stepped in and slayed the dragon with a spear, but only after getting the entire country to adopt Christianity.
Mass conversion.
He's actually kinda boss. He was raised by a witch who kidnapped him and 6 other saints. Eventually, he figured out she was evil, duh, and vanquished her to a cave, rescuing the other saints in the process. When he went to Egypt, he found another community sacrificing their maidens to a dragon. Seriously, that's insane. Luckily, he got a sword from the witch, Ascalon, and used it to shank the dragon. It's all downhill from here, really. Jeanne and Georgios are able to cure the curse on Siegfried, giving him the power to slay Fafnir and weaken Jalter's forces. This gives Ritsuka's party the chance to invade Orleans and confront Jalter in a final battle. Jeanne prevails over her dark self, only to discover the true villain was Caster Gilles all along. All the Singularity's allied servants stomp his creepy ass and recover the Grail. Despite the evil person he became, Jeanne still feels confident they'll fight together again, which is true if you actually keep Saber Gilles around. I just find him too uncanny to give him the pleasure of redemption. Plus he invades my gacha too much. When we resolve a singularity, the summoned servants vanish, but the timeline goes on its own, no longer contradicting human history. Ritsuka and Mashu ray-shift back to Chaldea, where they can enjoy a nice, refreshing shower. Congratulations! We are now one singularity closer to defeating Getia and preventing humanity's incineration. Look forward to part 3, where we'll cover the second singularity, Septem, where you'll get more than you can possibly fathom. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe to OtakuDaiKun for more anime lists, reviews, discussions, lore videos, live streams, and the Holy Waifu Wars. If you're interested in seeing this channel grow, please consider becoming a patron or donating in a super chat during any of my weekly live streams. Also, feel free to check the description for my social media profiles, including an ever-growing Discord full of fans of anime and the Fate series. Until next time, celebrate your fandom.